Caught me having a sip of tea there. Next step then, or next stage, the things that I'd like to talk about for the next few minutes would be some of the things that could stop or might stop us wanting to try and get help. And this is a subject that we should probably really think about because it involves and it's surrounded by an element of pride, professional pride, personal pride, and not wanting to show weakness potentially in an environment where that might not be particularly well received. So let's have a look at what can stop us getting help. I've only got a couple of slides on here to discuss, but let's go through and have a look at them anyway. One of the key drivers, one of the things that we talk about a lot is stigma. There's definitely a drive within the football community to get rid of discrimination, kick it out, and stigma and everything else that goes with it. But stigma around mental health is something that's still emerging and that's still not completely understood and still exists. Now, if you think of stigma as the unhelpful or negative thoughts, feelings, and actions or beliefs around a particular subject, so commonly we might think of race, we might think of sexuality, we might think of religion, then the discrimination really is the physical manifestation of those thoughts, those beliefs, and those feelings. So a clear example of that would be that I'm not going to pick this young player because whilst I believe him to be physically fit enough, I don't believe him to be mentally fit enough, because as I understand it, you know, he has an issue with sadness or a little bit anxious. You know, he gets very nervous before games and that can affect his play. And of course, I know we're working in a cutthroat environment where that needs to be managed, and that's part of the skill, but equally it does present as discrimination. But really what I think would be one of the drivers, and one of the biggest drivers, would be fear and pride of showing weakness and showing that you aren't capable of, the feeling that you aren't capable of carrying out your role within the team and supporting your team and what others might think of you. Now, it's very important for me to say that this is changing and conversations around mental health are improving with I would say with gusto. Lots of people are really positive behind it. We've got royals behind it. We've got lots of sports professionals, pros, and it's definitely taking a much bigger stride forward. But maybe at a lower level, at a more personal level, within a family even, and within a friendship circle, it's stuff that we need to consider. And some of the language that we use can also be discriminatory. So we've got to think about that it might stop somebody from wanting to get help. How can we address that stress then? Well, a club life balance is really important. Make sure that the day isn't only dominated by work, and ensure you have time off for eating, can fence off set times for friends. Tackle the environment, so make sure you're in a good, clean, safe working environment and that you're happy and your young people are happy, so decluttering and making sure that that's in a good spot. As hard as this might be for your young people, and for a lot of us, I don't have an issue with this, I've never been anywhere close to it, but discouraging perfectionism. The reality here is that no one is perfect. There is a desire to be so quite often, and it can be overwhelming and debilitating. Think about that, do the best you can, but unrealistic demands will often spill over into your personal life. And there can be a real big contributing factor, and often are a massive contributing factor in people's poor or deteriorating mental health. And with a result then that everything else starts to crumble with it because the perfection can't be achieved. And as hard as it might be, and I'm sitting here now, having had no work for several weeks or a couple of weeks and several weeks more to go, no doubt. But I am focusing on the happiness. The sun does come up, and you know, we've got to try. As human beings, we have this propensity, and young people do the same because it's part of their protective mechanism to focus on the things that are going to harm us, and to focus on the stuff that could do wrong and do harm. But we actually should really try and focus on the happiness. Consider sharing those happy thoughts with other people. So, thinking about stigma, thinking about some of the language that we can use or could be used that could prevent that young person, you or that young person, from wanting to get some help and wanting to admit that they could do with some help. Because once the help's on the way, recovery is not only likely, it's possible, and it's a journey, and it needs everyone to be buying in and involved in it in order to do so. So what we can do next is talk about well-being and what part that can play in certainly the encouragement, the maintenance and or the recovery of mental health.